Hey, we are live with a minute to spare. Cobbled this together. 1 minute. Okay. This is the day when you will get your projects. But first, lecture time. My favorite one this semester, I think. My absolute favorite one. And this might be a two-parter, depending on interest. I will wait a couple minutes for everybody to pop into the stream. And it looked like from the Q&A from technical writing just before this that most people are not looking to the Canvas announcements to gain access to the stream. In fact, I think nobody voted for that option, so I am not going to announce it in Canvas. Don't want to clog your emails. It defeats the point of what we're learning about. Matthew posted, what is that, a tank? Could be a sword. I don't know what kind of emoji that is. I see some pride flags. Might be a sword. And then a box with a kitten in it. Aw. Adorable. Emails. No, not emails this time. This time we're learning about getting a job in computer science, which some of you have already done. Chase. Big show off. Let me start with a poll while everybody's coming in. Do you have a job lined up after university? Thumbs up if you do. And don't include, let's say you think that your best friend's husband's uncle knows a guy who knows a guy and they're going to get you in. No. Offer. Talking offers. You've got an offer in your hand. Or the promise of an offer, at least from a company that you trust. You have a job lined up. So most people don't. Some people do. Congratulations to you guys who do. That is awesome. Everybody hearing me all right, by the way? I did get an audio bitrate warning there for a moment. But it looks like it cleared up. Did I get any stutters? You can hear me okay? All right. Looks like I sound good. Okay, we're going to get started. I think that's 15 in the stream. Yep, that's everybody. All right. Let's roll. So, getting a job in tech, an honest but pessimistic outlook. Why am I pessimistic? Because you've already heard the optimistic one 100 times. You've got the Career Center. You've got everybody telling you how great it's going to be. So, come on. You got to get a pessimistic outlook on it as well. You got to get some people telling you how bad it's going to be. And I don't mean any of this to preface this as saying you made a bad choice. I think you made the best choice. I think the job market for computer science is incredibly strong. The career path that you've chosen is practically a surefire ticket to the middle class. I don't know a lot of starving computer scientists. Everybody I know who has their undergrad in CS is doing pretty well. They at least have their own place to live and a vehicle and all that kind of stuff. So this is a great choice. I think probably the best choice. So congratulations on making it. I hope that you do well. First, let me begin with another poll. Let's see. I want to start with the question, who got into CS for the money? So if your primary reason for going into computer science was for the money, answer yes to this one. Okay. The next poll, I'm going to ask, who got into CS because they like it? So if your primary reason to get into CS was because you like computer science. Some of you might be surprised that 3 of your peers said they got into CS for the money. It's a pretty common thing in computer science, and it's something that a lot of people who are passionate about it don't realize that some of us are just here for the paycheck. We don't really care that much about your stupid nerd stuff, right? We just want to make good money. It is, like I said, a good ticket to the middle class. So a lot of folks get into it for the money. I will say that if you got into it for the money, I know a lot of people who work in factories that make a lot more than I do. And I'm not talking about office workers and managers. I'm talking about people who run machines. So if you got into it for the money, I'll bet you got into it for the money with a caveat. You wanted the best paying job that didn't involve working in a factory, right? You don't want to get your hands dirty. So think about that. Okay. But a lot of people got into it because they like computer science. And those are both good reasons, right? I'm sure for everybody it's a mix of both of those things. All right. So if you take nothing away from this presentation, take this away, because I have polled many of your peers in the past. I have done surveys, and none of them negotiate, and it's very sad. In fact, it's a trait that's shared, I think, by practically all young people today. Nobody teaches them to negotiate. In fact, on the contrary, they teach you not to negotiate. It's a huge shame. It's an erosion of workers' rights. It's bad for everybody when you don't negotiate. You must negotiate. Whatever they offer you, no matter what it is, ask for more. Ask for more salary, ask for a bonus, ask for vacation time, ask for benefits, whatever. Whatever you do, just don't accept the initial offer. Your salary, whatever money you actually make, is much more proportional to your negotiation skill than your skill as a computer science programmer. By learning to negotiate, you will make much more money than by learning to be a better computer scientist. It sucks, and it especially sucks because you don't get a lot of opportunities to negotiate. So you better take advantage of all of them. Market yourself whenever you can. Let's talk about some negotiation tactics when you get the job offer. A lot of employers know, especially with young people, that as soon as they offer you the job, you're going to say, yes, I'm so excited. It's my first job. Please pay me money to do the thing that I've been doing for free in college for 4 years, or actually negative money, technically, because you pay to do computer science. So what they'll do is they'll ring you up and they'll say, Billy Bob, you got the job. Congratulations. This is the salary. Are you good with that? And you're going to say yes. That's the wrong answer. Say, thank you so much. I'm so excited to start working here. Send me the terms to my email. Just send me those terms to my email, and I'll have a look at those, and I'll get back to you probably by tomorrow. You know, be nice. Be excited. Say thank you. Say you're excited. But ask for the terms in writing. Ask to get them in your email or something. Read them over. Think about it. And then negotiate. I'm most comfortable negotiating over email. Some people have big brass cojones, and they will negotiate over the phone. I don't really think that's a good idea, because oftentimes a person who can give you better terms is not the person you're talking to on the phone anyway. They have to go back to their superior to figure out what they can actually give you. So you're rushing both parties, and it doesn't really benefit anybody. So I prefer to negotiate over email. You get your terms, and you respond back, I would actually like this and this, or etc. All right, so whatever you get, whatever they send you, negotiate on those terms, and make sure that whatever they agree on in writing. Don't let them tell you, oh yeah, we'll give you a couple extra vacation days. It'll be off the books. Don't worry about it. Don't let them do that. Make sure that your contract, whatever it is that you start with, make sure that you have those terms in writing, because that does mean something. And don't rush. Give yourself a chance to research. Figure out what you should make. Figure out what the average salaries in your area are. Most importantly, ask your friends. Another part of this is be willing to share what you make with other people. Don't be squirrely about it. We all benefit if we talk about our salaries. We all benefit if everybody knows what everybody makes. It helps everybody's bargaining position. Yeah, sometimes it can cause a little bit of bad blood if one person working the same job makes way more than another, but it has nothing to do with skill. Remember, it has to do with negotiation. I found out that somebody at this institution, for example, working the same job as me, was making 20% less. Why did they make 20% less? Because they took the initial offer. I bargained the initial offer up 20%. All right, so they took it. I bargained. We did the same job. I don't think I'm a much better professor, but that's how it went. All right. And, that's a lot of money to have. Okay, the best case if you're negotiating is to have another offer. So when you're applying for jobs, your goal should be to get multiple offers at the same time because then you can pit them against each other. Don't bluff. That offer better be real. You better have a real offer to uh, play against. You might even have to provide like screenshots or something to prove that it exists because hiring managers are not stupid, okay, and they can smell a bluff. They're much more experienced with this than you are, right? So the skills are completely unbalanced against you. A lot of people think that negotiation is bad because like you might lose the job or something. I've never heard of anybody losing a job because they politely asked for better terms. The worst that they'll ever tell you is no, this is what we got, take it or leave it. Most companies are not going to tell you that. I've seen companies that won't budge on salary though. It's common for a company not to budge on salary. A little more on that later. But this negotiation phase, the part where you ask for something in return, you ask for consideration in exchange for taking that job, that's going to be your first look at how that company treats its employees. If they say no, go pound sand or take our offer, they're going to tell you that a lot. That's going to be your future at that company. So think about whether you want to work there. If they're nice and accommodating and they entertain your ideas and your demands, I guess I should say, your requests, then that's probably going to be a good place to work. But a lot of companies will not budge on salary. That's not uncommon. So in that case, negotiate for vacation time. Get an extra week. Most places in America start you off with 2 weeks of vacation a year. That's 10 days that you can take off a year. Sometimes that includes your sick days, your holidays, whatever. 10 days plus Christmas and Thanksgiving is pretty standard. That's terrible. 10 days a year off, that is nothing. So ask for an extra week, maybe 2 weeks. The more you start with, the faster you accumulate extra vacation. That's great. Ask for a sign-up bonus. Fairly common in computer science to get a few $1,000 in sign-up bonus. Not that common for your first position, but pretty common for any position after that. I've seen people get $10,000, $20,000 immediately on sign-up. That's a lot of money to get on day one. Usually, it's contingent upon you staying there for a year or two. If you decide to quit, then you lose that money. You have to return it. Whereas if you get fired, you don't have to return it. Loophole. And if they won't do any of that, then ask for maybe a better job title. Maybe instead of junior developer, you can be developer, and it'll let you keep some ego and put something nicer in your resume. So even that's something. All right, let's talk about how to compute your compensation, because a lot of people don't know that your total compensation, some people call this TC, you'll see this especially in like finance, businesses, your total compensation is much more than just your salary. Your salary is just one part. So first there's bonuses. A lot of companies, especially software companies, give out bonuses. During this pandemic, probably nobody's giving out bonuses. That might be true for a while. I made this whole slideshow, by the way, before the pandemic, so a lot of this information a little squirrely right now. But anyway, bonuses, 2 to 5% of your salary, but don't count on getting bonuses because, again, something might happen. You might not get it. They might say that you can get a bonus of up to 3%. Don't necessarily believe them. You're probably not going to get that. Don't expect to get that. Don't factor it into your decision making too much. Then there's retirement matching funds. This can be a big deal. Some institutions will match much more than others. So typically, it'll be somewhere between 2 and 5% of your pay, and you will contribute that towards your retirement. And then your employer will match that money at somewhere between zero point 0.5 to 2 times what you contributed. So for example, if you're making $1,000 a month and they're matching 10% at 1.5 times, that means $100 a month is going to come out of your paycheck. You'll only take home 900, and then your employer will kick another 150 in. So you're actually making an extra $150 a month. In that scenario, that is a 15% increase in what the employer overall is paying you, although you're not going to be able to collect that money until you're quite old. That adds up really fast. In some jobs I've seen in the public sector, when I had the OPERS retirement plan, I believe the matching rate was something like 14%. I had to kick in 7. That means I was getting 21% of my salary contributed to my retirement fund. That is a huge amount of money that's going into the retirement fund. Sometimes in the public sector, they'll have what's called lifetime retirement plans instead. Once you contribute a certain number of years of service, you will get a check every month until you die. That means that if you plan to live normal life expectancy, you will get a ton of money. in the ballpark of millions. Usually it's based on your few highest years of earnings, so something like the average of your 3 highest years. That's a ton of money, but those are typically only in the public sector, and they're becoming very rare. Still, if you can get one, think about it, because that is a lot of cash when you retire. Okay, other parts of your compensation are how much your employer pays for health insurance. Typically, you will pay somewhere between 1 and 500, depending on how stingy your employer is, and then your employer will pay the rest. Most employers are buying silver or gold quality plans. That's like comparing them against the plans on the healthcare exchange. They're not actually necessarily rated silver or gold or whatever, because the bronze plans are just far too cheap, especially at software companies and like office companies. But still, those plans are expensive. Those are plans that cost $1,000 per person at the market rate if you went on the healthcare exchange and tried to buy those personally, like you didn't have an employer, you were self-employed. Those would cost you $1,000 a month. So the fact that your employer is kicking in somewhere between $900 and $500 a month is a lot of money. If you have a spouse and children, you're looking at your employer paying you the equivalent of a couple $1,000s a month just for your health insurance. Now, some employers opt to instead buy you a cheaper plan and then kick you HSA money, which is health savings account money. This is money they'll typically give you annually. They'll give you somewhere between $500, maybe $2,500, and it's basically cash. It's tax-free, and you can only spend it on medical expenses, which makes it like cash with some limitations. But medical expenses includes things like aspirin, or you can buy yourself a brace or whatever. There's all kinds of stuff that you wouldn't expect that can be a medical expense. Now, typically the health insurance plans will be crappier when you have a health savings account, as in the deductibles will be higher, but you have this extra cash to offset that. And then, of course, you might get company stock. That means a portion of your pay or retirement is issued in monopoly money with the company's name on it. And in some cases, the company is not even public. In fact, in most cases, the company is not even public. So they're giving you some ambiguous share of the company, and they're giving it to everybody who works there. Or maybe the company stock is just for sale to you at a discount with a restriction that you can't sell it for a while. Something like that. Get out of Steam here. This can be lucrative. This can be extremely lucrative. Most of the people who I know who are millionaires because they got company stock in a company that ended up doing very well. Most of the people who I know are millionaires are not computer scientists. They're just people who worked regular blue-collar jobs at a company that was ultimately very successful. So they sat around at the same company for 30 years, making a modest wage, not a particularly large amount of money, but because part of their income was paid in company dollars, and the company did especially well in their retirement, they now have many, many millions in the bank because that company money ended up being worth far more than they got. But it can also go the other way around. That's a portion of your pay that ends up being completely worthless if the company doesn't do well, which is also the case fairly often. So if you're going to get paid in monopoly money, make sure that the company is a good one and you believe in it. Look at regional salary differences. Regional salary differences. Okay, Cleveland is cheap. Very cheap compared nationally. It's very hard to find a city where the cost of living is lower, especially a major metro. 60K here is literally 120K in San Francisco. So one of your peers from last year got a job offer from Uber at 120K, and they turned it down because 120K in Cleveland dollars is barely 50K. That means they got better offers in Cleveland when you think about it in terms of cost of living. You can use the NerdWallet cost of living calculator to figure out what cost of livings are in other cities. Think about regional tax differences. Learn how marginal rates work. A lot of people don't know how marginal rates work. I know one woman who has a PhD who was saying that she wishes that she didn't get a raise because it put her in the next tax bracket and she thought she would lose money. If you think that, you're an idiot. So learn how marginal rates work. You will not lose money by getting a raise. But the typical take-home in every state is quite different. Let's say you make $50,000 in California. After all your income taxes come out, you'll take home only $39,000 of those dollars. In Ohio, you'll take home $40,000 of those dollars. And in Nevada, you take home $41,000 of those dollars. So Ohio is one of the lower tax states. We're somewhere in the middle. However, we are in one of the highest tax municipalities in Ohio. We're in Cuyahoga County, where we have a local tax rate of between 2 and 4%. Lake and Geauga are slightly cheaper, and you have to pay in the city you live in and the city you work in. Sometimes you get a discount, sometimes you don't. It could be up to 4% of your income just for the city tax. So make sure you choose the city where you live and work wisely. When you're applying for a job in Cleveland, think about where your employer is located because it could cost you a considerable amount of money if they're in a high RETA area. And also, don't forget about sales tax and property tax and all those other stuff. When you're done paying all your taxes, expect to take home about half of your money. You lose about half your money if you make over 50, 60K. If you own property. If you don't own property, then a portion of that obviously goes to your rent instead, which is property tax in a slightly roundabout way. So raises have to happen because inflation exists. If you don't get a raise every year, then you're actually getting a demotion, you're getting a pay cut, because every year things cost more. So the standard raise for cost of living, that is something that you should expect to get every year, is somewhere between 2 and 5%, because that's roughly the rate of inflation. Now, in hard times like this, when nobody is giving out raises, it's not unexpected for the cost of living raise to be suspended. That's pretty typical. But in a general year, when the company is performing well, you should be getting 2 to 5% before we even start talking about merit. Merit raises should be in addition to your cost of living. And merit raises can vary widely. I've seen people get 5%, I've seen people get 15%, but most companies are very squirrely about their merit raises. They won't give you more than a couple percent, which is why a lot of people, unfortunately, instead of staying at one place, have to jump ship repeatedly in order to raise their salary, and why, again, it's very important that you negotiate at the beginning, because once you get a high salary at the beginning, those percent raises are more raw dollars, because a percent of a higher number is a bigger number. And also, you start with more money in the first place, so you don't need the raise as much. When you're negotiating, when you're first getting the job, when you're considering the offer, if they didn't send it to you in the offer that they sent when you asked for those terms, ask them when, what kind of cost of living raises will I get? How do I earn a merit raise? You can even bring those things up at the interview. Those things let the interviewers know that you are serious, you are a serious employee, and you value your work and your skills. So ask them, what am I going to get? What do people get here as cost of living raises, and how do I earn a merit raise? It sounds good if you're the kind of person who expects to get a merit raise, right? It sounds like you're going to earn it. Don't ask how much it is, ask how do you earn it. All right, so how long does it take to get a good job? Because a lot of people think that they're going to send out 5 applications and walk away with a job. Nah, sorry. It doesn't take hours, it doesn't take tens of hours, it doesn't take 100 hours, it takes hundreds of hours to get a good job. It's going to be your full-time job for weeks to get a job. So if you haven't already started, you might want to think about starting now. It's going to take you a very long time if you want to get the optimal job. So looking at your most successful peers from the couple years that I asked. So these are the people who reported, at least to me, that they got the highest salaries, and these are the people who reported that they got in at the biggest named companies. That should read 70K a year for the salary, by the way. I think that's about the average for the most successful, converted into Cleveland dollars. So I forgot to change that. But from a short survey of your most successful peers, they sent out about 150 job applications. Each one of those has taken you half an hour, maybe more. They got 20 first round responses, so something like a skill test or just a quick phone interview with HR. From that, they got 10 real or in-person interviews where they actually got to meet with the developers or the hiring managers, people who make the decision. They got past that first screening process and they're on to the long-form interview. And from that, they generated about 5 offers and got 1 job. All right, so just from all of that, just 1 job, which they chose between the different offers. And in I think a couple cases they negotiated. But again, most of your peers didn't negotiate, which is really a shame. And for that, they got an average salary in Cleveland dollars, I believe, of about 70K. So if you look at the ratio of how many job applications they sent to how many interviews they got to how many offers they got, for every 20 applications you send, you expect to get about 2 interviews, and from that expect to get about 1 offer. Now, if you look at your more average peers, they sent out about 50 job applications. They got 8 first round responses, 3 real interviews, and they quit after 1 offer. They just accepted their first offer and they got that 1 job. So your average peers just applied till they got 1 offer. And they average about 60K. There was pretty widespread. Some people made 50 and under. Some people made in the 70s. Some people had remote jobs, which raised their pay slightly. Some people moved to another city. If you're willing to relocate, you can make more money. I convert it to Cleveland dollars, so it's about 60K. The ratio of applications and interviews and offers is still about 20 to 2 to 1, but these people just put in less of a grind. They didn't apply to as many places, and so they make about 10K less a year on average, sometimes considerably less. So you think about your odds at each level. Think about when you're sending in an application. When you send in a resume, the odds that you're going to get a phone interview or a first screen is only like 10%. So when you send in that application, most likely it's the last you'll see of it, and you won't get a rejection or anything. It'll just be gone forever. And then if you pass the phone interview phase, that's only about 50-50. That might be it for you too. You might talk to them on the phone, and you'll never know what you did wrong. It'll just be gone forever. You won't hear from them again. So about 50-50 to do that. By the way, these numbers also match up with what our hiring process looks like here at John Carroll. It's about the same in terms of how many applications we get, how many people we phone interview, how many people we invite, and then how many people we offer. If we put up a job for a professor, we tend to get something like, 30, 40, 50 applications. We tend to phone interview 5, 10 people. We tend to bring in 2 or 3, and then obviously we give 1 job. So again, it matches up with that. After you pass the phone interview, you will go on to maybe the best 2 or 3. It'll narrow down for a further long-form kind of interview, and then the best person in that category gets a job offer. So even if you got to the long-form interview at the end, you're probably competing with at least 1 other person, right? There's probably at least 1 other person at the same stage as you. So at best, your odds are 50-50 even when you've gotten that far. A lot of the time you get to that step and it feels like the job's a lock. Not necessarily. You're still looking at 50-50. That's a coin toss. All right, let's think about how much you're going to make in Cleveland dollars, assuming that you are well qualified. There are not a lot of entry-level jobs in Cleveland that exceed 60,000, unless you find a job remote or you're willing to relocate. That'll likely be somewhere around the ceiling for entry-level. Median qualified will make slightly less. Most people that graduate from JCU I wouldn't lump into the poorly qualified category, so don't even look at that. Nationally, though, the stats on computer science are 70K. Why? Why is the national salary so much higher than the Cleveland salary? Why are most good qualified candidates making 50, 60 in Cleveland when 70K is the national average? What gives? Why is the national average salary so high? Anybody have any ideas of why the national computer science salary, computer developer, software developer, whatever salary is given so high? Someone answered California, and that's the answer. California. It is so expensive to live in the valley, and many, many computer scientists live in the valley. So California, New York drive up those national stats because that's where many, many software developers live, like a large chunk of them. And so even though they're taking in like 150K starting salaries to live in the valley. So if you get a job at Google in the valley to start, you'll probably make at least 150K on top of your stock and your benefits and all this other stuff, and they'll even help you with housing. But that is like the equivalent of making 50K in Cleveland. You will likely not own a vehicle. You will likely not own a home for a considerable length of time. But yeah, those salaries are widely inflated. So a lot of people get in to see us in Cleveland expecting to make 70 out the door. You probably won't, just because Cleveland is a much lower cost of living city. Now, what qualifies you to get a job? What should you be pushing? Number 1, if you have an in at the company, that's great. If you know somebody, networking is key. Networking is numero uno. The people you know are going to help you much more than what you know. So if you know somebody at a company, that is going to help massively. So make sure you make friends while you're here in college, because one of those days, those might be the person that you know. And if you don't have an in, that's okay. Most people are in that boat. Most people don't have an in, especially coming out of undergrad. It's like, obviously you haven't had enough time to network with professionals, so you probably don't know anybody. You're probably in an entry-level position where you don't have an in. In that case, what matters next most is definitely your past employment, especially past employment that's relevant to the job at hand, so internships and stuff that's in tech. If you have past employment that's not in tech, that's helpful too. Anything that shows that you're willing to and able to show up to a place at a designated time every day and follow orders is a really good sign that you're going to be a good worker. But that past employment, what you did in those internships, matters a lot. That's going to be the thing that they probably ask you about the most during the formal interview phase. If you don't have any internships, then you need to focus on your professional portfolio, because if you haven't worked, if you haven't done anything professionally, that is for money, then you need to focus on the stuff that you've done for free, at least. And to show that you're a good worker and that you can make quality computer science stuff, you should have a GitHub account, you should have projects posted. This is where this class comes in big time, right? So a lot of you indicated last time that you've never had an internship. Then you should make sure that you do well at this project and you have something to show in interview, something that you can hopefully pull up on your phone or your laptop and show, I made this, I did this, here and here, this part's mine, this is why I did this, etc. So anything that you can make, that you can show, is going to be greatly beneficial to you. And if you post it publicly, somebody might even look at it during the application process. So if you have a link to your GitHub, someone might even take a look at that. And they might like what they see, and they might hire you just based on that. So if you don't have any employment experience, focus on your professional portfolio. You can start building it now. It's definitely not too late. There's plenty of time left before you have to start applying in earnest. You can get a couple good projects in on your resume. Next, most important, the rest of them are not in any real particular order. But somewhat in order. Personal skills are a big deal. Sometimes companies will hire the worst programmer because they like them more, or they fit better with them. That's a person who they are more comfortable with. Culture fit is a big deal. Companies like to hire people that they think they're going to get along with. Teams like to hire people that they're going to get along with. Some people call this homogeneity. Some people think that this is bad diversity, but that's just how people are. They like to hire people that they find agreeable. And that means that different companies will have different cultures, and sometimes you'll come into a company and realize that it's just not for you, and sometimes you'll try to pretend that it's for you and it won't work. So if you come into a company on an interview and they have this bro culture, they have pool tables everywhere, and they play foosball during every lunch break, and you wear 2 pairs of glasses and only play video games, you're probably not going to get hired if they notice, and pretending to be a bro is probably not going to work out well for you either, and they'll probably notice as well. After culture and personality fit, your coding skill. Notice how far down that is, because nobody really cares, because it's very hard to determine. Super hard to determine. More on that later, because it is very important in other instances. But this is broadly for all kinds of jobs, and specifically in Cleveland. Next up is diversity, and some of you are probably sad going, oh, I'm not diverse. Well, yeah, you are. Everybody's diverse somehow. So I'll give you an example. In my graduate program, where I got my doctorate, I was one of only, I think, 2 people who was born in America. Everybody else was foreign born. So I was diverse, technically speaking, right? And keeping me on gives them some diversity points. And then in committees here at John Carroll, I'm usually the only engineer. So that makes me diverse, because no one else is an engineer. There's not a lot of engineers here. So figure out something that makes you diverse and try to include it somewhere, either on your cover letter or in your resume. You can drop hints to your diversity if you have some kind of diversity that you want to use to your advantage. If you have a diversity to use, drop hints to it somewhere in your resume or cover letter. Someone asked where I got my doctorate. I got my doctorate from beautiful Cleveland State University, which is a big place for international students to come in. And then all the way down here is going to be your GPA and educational performance and what clubs you were in and stuff like that. It's cool, it matters, but it doesn't matter that much. And if your GPA was less than 3.5, you probably shouldn't even include it, because nobody cares at that point. Somebody also asked, did I get a master's before or during that process? Yes, I got my master's before I got my doctorate. I did all 3 of my degrees at the same institution. That's how I was able to finish so quickly. That's highly unusual, but it is also the fastest path to finish. So I think I took 9 years altogether from start of undergrad to end of doctorate, which is relatively quick. in terms of how long most people take to do it. Some people follow the traditional, well, most people follow the traditional path, which is 4 years undergrad, 2 years master's, and then somewhere between 3 and 5 years for your doctorate at least, all at different institutions. So by the time you finish your doctorate, you're usually well over 30. Ugh. Okay, let's talk about skills tests. This goes back to your coding skills. If you want to work for a major company, FAANG, Facebook, Apple, Amazon, Netflix, Google, one of those big names that everybody knows, then you're going to have to pass the insane skills tests that they give you. Those companies basically don't care about anything that we just talked about. They only care about your skills. They are going to give you multiple tiers of skill interviews, and they are primarily the types of questions that you would have seen on your data structures and algorithms homework, but on crack. And if you want to work at one of those companies, you need to start grinding out lead code questions right now. So you should be grinding out like one a day or doing them for a couple hours. Your peers that ended up getting in at one of those companies did 200 plus of those questions, at least one a day. They destroyed their social and professional lives to grind away at those questions. They did ultimately get the job. Your other option, of course, is to be a savant. If you are incredibly talented, then you can probably answer those questions from first principles, but many of them are very, very challenging. An example of one that might be considered like very easy is invert a doubly linked list. Okay, that'd be really easy. They'd expect you to knock out the code for that in like 10 minutes with no autocomplete, no references, no help while they're watching your screen. Okay, that would be a reasonable expectation. I don't know. All kinds of different crazy questions like that. Just check out LeetCode. They group them by difficulty and see what kind of crazy stuff that FAANGs expect out of you. Why do FAANGs do this? They want the best. And everybody applies there. They realize that everybody wants to work there because of the compensation and all that. So the logic's like this. They know that a bad candidate is never going to pass a skills test no matter how hard they study because it's just hard. It's very hard. If you're not good at computer science, you're probably never going to get it, even if you study for 1,000 hours. But a good candidate that doesn't study the test to pass, all the LeetCode questions to pass, it's not a big loss. There'll be plenty of other good candidates, and there'll be people who study. The reality is they get a lot of people who are mediocre programmers but just practice LeetCode questions for 500 hours, but they're mediocre to a passable extent. Just being able to do those questions and just being able to apply those to an interview means you're reasonably competent or extremely lucky. It's possible that the question that you looked at the night before is the one that they asked you. So it's always possible to get lucky like that too. And that's another reason why you have to grind out those questions, just in case you get the exact same one on an interview, because there are only so many crazy data structures and algorithms questions in the world. Another thing that you'll see a lot in the computer science community and in general in white-collar jobs are thinly veiled general intelligence tests. General intelligence testing for private employment is, of course, illegal. If you've ever applied to join the military or applied for certain public sector jobs, like spy or police officer or those kinds of things, you probably did take a general intelligence test because it's not illegal for public employment. So if you took the Armed Services Vocational Battery, ASVAB, that's a general intelligence test that just determines your IQ or G or whatever you want to call it. But for private jobs, it's illegal. They can't do it. So what companies will do instead, especially computer science companies, is they will purchase test kits. There are a bunch of tests out there you can buy that are just IQ tests based on your job skills. And it happens to be that because computer science is so algorithmic and fancy in terms of complexity and abstraction, you can actually get pretty close by just using computer science-based terms. Every industry does this, though. I've seen this happen in even manufacturing jobs, like floor operator jobs. They have to take a poorly veiled general IQ test that asks some questions like, how many sides does a hexagonal nut have? So this is just a question of general intelligence. It determines whether or not you know the word hex and you can synthesize that knowledge, but it is thinly veiled in the sense that it kind of applies to the kind of thing that a floor machine person would have. Or they'll show you a picture of a bunch of gears and they'll show you which way one of them is turning and they'll ask you which way the last gear is turning. Again, that's abstract reasoning, but it's thinly veiled behind a question that's kind of related to machine operation. So expect to get these kinds of tests with questions that are CS-like but not quite CS-based, because they're actually just trying to assess your general intelligence. And realize that the passing score for these really aren't that rigorous. They just want to know that you're not exceptionally stupid. So there's a bar that you have to pass, basically, and anything beyond that you don't get extra credit for. So it's kind of like a pass-fail system, generally speaking. So don't sweat it. It's more or less impossible to study for these things. You're going to get them pretty often. They're fairly time-consuming, which is annoying. You could spend 10 to 30 minutes on one of these things. But yeah, don't worry about it. You probably won't get screened by this part of the process. Now, personality tests are a little bit funnier. A lot of jobs will make you do a personality test, and these generally fall into two categories. The first category will be screening out people who are crazy. And especially if you've ever worked in retail or something like that, you've taken one of those tests that screens out people who are crazy. And then the next kind of test, which is a little more common in software development and white-collar jobs, is the personality or culture fit test. And these are going to be based on things like Myers-Briggs or Big Five style questions. You can take these tests for free online and see where you kind of fit, but more on that in a second. Let's talk about the test to screen out low-functioning psychopaths and other crazy people first. These are really obvious, and the answers should be really obvious, but let me say, if you are a low-functioning psychopath, here are a couple hints. Is it okay to steal from your employer? The answer is no. Is it okay to do illegal drugs in your free time? The answer is no. So answer the questions the way you think a normal person would answer them if you have some kind of psychopathy. And a lot of you are probably going, ha, who would answer these questions wrong? I've got a friend who is a little bit psychopathic in the literal sense. You know, they like to torment small animals and they don't have a lot of empathy. And they were filling out a job application online, and I was talking to them at the time, and they answered both of these questions. They said, yes, it's okay to steal from your employer. And yes, they were serious. They thought that that wouldn't be a problem. And then to the other question, they said, yeah, I smoke a little weed in my free time. And again, they thought that wouldn't be a problem. Yeah, that's a problem if you don't realize that's a problem. Okay, the other kind of test, the test for the personality, sometimes it seems like they're asking for particular answers. Just be honest. You never know what they're actually looking for. They might just be looking for that you scored the same as everybody else, in which case it becomes a crazy game theory of, well, if they answered honestly, then you probably should too. Those will be questions like, I prefer going out compared to staying in. So introversion versus extroversion. I smile often. Those kinds of things will be personality tests rather than just tests for whether or not you are crazy. And sometimes they are screaming for conscientiousness. So how hard you work, how dutiful you are in completing your assignments, and how much attention to detail you have. So they'll ask you questions regarding your attention to detail, regarding how important it is for you to finish your assignments on time, that kind of thing. So in those cases, if you're not generally a conscientious person, if you're lazy, you might want to pretend you're not lazy. That's just a little tip there. You don't have to, though. If you're truly not a conscientious worker, you can try to get a job in a company that doesn't care, which is probably quite a few of them. All right, that's it for today. I might do to be continued on this later, but I think that's enough for now. Anybody have any questions on anything we went over so far? Any questions on anything we went over here? Discord or YouTube chat. I'm going to post these groups to the Canvas page and also to Discord in a moment. I'm going to post them to Somebody asked, what should we expect from a skills test if we aren't going for a FANG company? So sometimes there will be less skilly skills tests, less crazy ones. They might let you do research. They might let you answer more slowly. They might relax. Most firms in Cleveland, most places that hire programmers in Cleveland are not crazy like FANG are, and they don't ask you ridiculous skills questions. They ask you stuff that you probably should have learned in college, like how do you loop through all of the items in a linked list? How do you print out every other element in an array? Simple things like that. If you're the kind of person that tends to choke in those kinds of high stress scenarios, that can be a disadvantage for you. I encourage you to practice so you don't get stressed when it comes to it. But generally, places in Cleveland aren't going to put you through the crazy ringer. What you will get sometimes, which is pretty obnoxious, is the take-home skills test. The take-home skills test will be they'll give you some problem and they'll ask you to finish it on your own time, and they usually don't give you a window of how long it ought to take you, or even worse, they tell you, don't spend more than an hour on this. And then you get into this crazy game of, do I want to show off how much I can do in an hour by actually spending 3 hours on it and pretending I did it in one? Or do I want to be honest and do what a normal person would do in an hour? I don't know the answer to that. But I will say that the take-home skills tests, the companies that do that don't have any better odds of you getting the job than others. Sometimes they have worse. So consider when you're spending 5 hours on some stupid skills test for a job you don't even get, that maybe your time would have been better spent just applying other places, because that place might be a little pathological if they expect you to work for free right out the door, right? So if they hand you a 5-hour skill test to take home, maybe don't bother. But if you do bother, then don't put too much effort into it unless you really, really want that job. I hope that answers the question. Let's see, where can I put this? I'm going to make an announcement for the groups. Or I'll just put it in files. Yeah, I'll just put it in the course files, and then you all have it on Discord already. Okay, so those are going to be the project groups. That text file there, I'll show it on my screen here too. One group has 3 people again because there are not enough people for every group to have 4. So for the rest of class today, I want you guys to do a couple things. First, I want you to pick which channel your group is going to occupy, and we'll name it after you. So go ahead and colonize the channel that you want the best. I think group B is probably the best channel. I don't know. It doesn't matter. Anyway, colonize whichever channel you want. I'll name it after your project. Get acquainted with everybody, exchange names, exchange contact info. I'm going to go into your group's chat channel and pass you the contact info of the person that you're going to be talking about for the project. So what I want you guys to do today is designate your point person, your point of contact, the person that is going to talk to the customer on your team's behalf, or the person that's going to reach out to them first, because obviously only one of you can write that email first. Remember, you should CC all your group mates, so you should all be involved in that process, but one of you should be designated the main point of contact. And then remember that you're going to have to start having like Scrum, Kanban, whatever daily stand-ups. So choose the person who's going to run those meetings, the person who's nominally in charge of handing out your work. And I'm going to pop into your Discord channel at some point before class ends here and ask you who's going to be your contact person and who's going to be your Scrum team, whatever leader. Those can be the same person if you want. It doesn't matter. If you want to take on that work, that's on you, sure. And I'm going to share the contact info for the customer with all of you guys. And from here, it is going to be on you. So at some point before next week, before next Tuesday, let's say, either on Monday, today, or Friday, because most of these people probably aren't going to respond on the weekends, you should reach out to your customer and get a meeting, figure out what they want, whatever you want to do. It's up to you from there, how you want to handle it. So I'm going to sign off the stream. And again, just colonize a chat. I'll rename it after your group. And I will see you guys in the Discord momentarily.